start the recording. And it is 2:02, and I'm calling to order the July 11 meeting of the Citizen Advisory Board for the PUD. And who I'm seeing here right now is we've got Dan Taylor, Craig Durgan, Seb Eggert, Tom Engel, and myself, and that's 5 of us. So we do have a quorum. Hopefully we'll see Bruce or Rick later. As I said, Rod is camping and he's not in cell phone range. And Kellen is, I think he may be headed towards England about now. So at any rate, we will go ahead and call this meeting to order. Per the governor's order, amended proclamations 20-05 and 21-14.5, and in continued response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Jefferson County PUD does not invite an in-person room for meetings of the BOC or the CAB, and meetings are held remotely via Zoom. Participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute, and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. Also with us today, we have Commissioner Kenneth Collins and PUD consultant Don McDaniel and CAB resource guy. And I think Jameson is still here with us. And Jean Hall, who is kind enough to facilitate our meeting today. Moving on to item 3, agenda approval. Are there any changes, amendments, additions to the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Don has his hand up.
I just have a comment on the agenda. Kevin is out of town looking at PON network systems in Oregon, so there'll be no GM report today.
Oh, okay. So no GM report today. So we will take that off of the agenda, and CAB business will become item 7. And subcommittee reports will become item 8. Resolution number 2018-015 will become 8.1. CAB open forum will become 9. Announcements 10. Communications 11. Future agenda items 12. And 13 will be our adjournment then. So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Seb, was that you? Okay,
No.
Seb.
I think it was Dan, but I'll second his motion.
Okay, so Dan
Yes.
made the motion to approve the agenda as amended. Seb has seconded it. All those in favor say aye, or raise your hands. I can see you all. Great, thank you. And the agenda is approved unanimously. Public comment, I don't really see anybody here except because if you're not at a meeting, you're out in this glorious weather.
Right.
So
I don't know where you are, Jessica, but it's too hot to be alive outside.
You must be from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, all the moss on my back is drying up and going away. And the web between my toes and fingers is cracking and bleeding.
I've got lots of shade trees here. Okay, moving along then, from item 4 to the minutes. We do have no minutes to approve this meeting. And I believe Cammie will have those for us next month. So moving on from there, we have the Board of Commissioners update. Commissioner Collins, you're up.
I can.
This time I thought I would unmute myself before I began talking. So as as Don had mentioned, Kevin and Will O'Donnell are in Oregon visiting other utilities to look at how they're setting up their PON network for broadband.
Could you explain what that acronym is, please?
Yeah, there's
Public access. something wireless.
No. It has to do with whether you have an active relay system for signals for over the fiber optic cable, or whether you have a passive system. That the P stands for passive, and it is less expensive. It is more state of the art than the active network. And that is the limit of my knowledge on it.
That's more than mine.
So speaking of broadband policy has, Don, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that one of the options that is under a PON system is through a single data point, you can serve multiple data points throughout your system and still maintain a high quality. And the passive on this thing is really associated with a splitter that is not electrified, but the rest of the system, network system has to be. So there are some, as Ken mentioned, some great financial benefits, but there's some service level benefits as well. That's all I have.
And what are the initials? PAWN?
No, PON.
Oh. Okay. So I can look that up and get a bigger definition
Then you can tell me.
at the next meeting.
So speaking of broadband, we've spent a lot of time last meeting and the prior meeting going over the broadband policy for it would be residential and business customers for whom we would be providing retail services. And we've gone through a number of revisions in order to make it more comprehensive and to be able to accomplish the goal of protecting the interests of the PUD while also protecting the interests of the customers and making it clear, here's what we're providing, here's what we're expecting of you. And I think we finally have a document that has been approved or will be approved on the next consent agenda. I think we're done revising it after, I would say, at least 5 passes over it. We also talked about, we got a preview of the construction work plan over the next 4 years. That also is going to be subject to adjustments. It does look like from not last meeting, but the previous meeting, we are going forward with the planned rate increases. What is driving that has been the cost of materials. Labor costs are also going to be going up. I don't think there's any question about that. The only question is by how much. So we need to position ourselves in a way that we can support construction and as well as regular day-to-day services that the PUD is providing. We also are going forward with a loan program where the PUD will borrow at 0.4% interest rate from the Department of Agriculture and be able to allow people to pay over time for improvements in their, really, when I say improvements, efficiencies in their electric consumption, primarily conversion from resistance electric heat to heat pumps, but also weatherization to make houses and other dwellings more energy efficient. So we've had also a preliminary budget review, and that really is a moving target. But we're in pretty good shape right now, and will be with the rate increase. So any questions about what your Board of Commissioners is up to? Dan?
Yes, particularly with regard to siloing out the electric and water utility from PUD, or from broadband rather. Can you talk a little bit about what that language looks like?
So initially, while accounting will be able to separate very cleanly what is being spent on broadband, it remains part of the electrical division. It will not be a standalone, I think, until it's actually making money. And we anticipate 3 to 4 years down the road. We still have, although we've been approved for $27 million in grants, no contracts have been signed yet, and no money has come through the pipeline. So when all of this will start is still an open question.
I guess I'm really uncomfortable with that, more so than my demeanor may let on. I do not think that it is at all right, correct, proper, or sane to allow the electric and water utility ratepayers to be subsidizing broadband. And it looks to me like the door is wide open for that.
The water utility customers in no way will be subsidizing broadband. But this is a new business. It's going to take an investment. That money has to come from somewhere, because not all of the costs are going to be covered by the grants. So
So here we go down the primrose path.
Well, it's either that or, Will O'Donnell anticipates that we'll also be getting additional grant monies, so that we'll have about $40 million available to build out broadband throughout Jefferson County. I'm not pretending that there are no risks involved. Is there a possibility that we're going to bankrupt the PUD with broadband? No, because if it doesn't, there are going to be points where if we find that the take rate is far below what we anticipate, then, and it's really a money drain, then I think we'll stop there. But if it takes money to launch a new business, as I'm sure several of you are aware. And that
I'd like to also second Dan's concerns and point out that the PUD doesn't even have a written business plan for broadband, and it can't even answer the questions that the CAB sent to staff and the BOC unanimously. So this is a real concern, and I guess if you want to ignore the CAB in the questions, that's your prerogative. I think it's a bit of a mistake, though.
So There is a business plan for the broadband. I don't know whether you attended the meeting with Doug Dawson participating. Did you?
That was not a business plan. That was a glossy presentation. A business plan is much more comprehensive, usually has more than just your, best case scenario, so that you know what could happen if you don't get your take rate of 70% like you're hoping for.
Well, I appreciate your comment. But I think that having perhaps for a future CAB meeting, Will O'Donnell and Mike Bailey to talk about the details of the business plan would be a better approach,
Well, first
because they have the details. I do not.
First, you actually have to have a business plan, and you do not.
Okay, thank you. Seb, and then Tom.
Yeah, I have that concern as well, Ken. To me, without a really solid way to predict and then measure against what you predicted, you don't really have a handle on what the outcome is going to be. And I think the same is probably true with the new metering technology that's going into place. So do you have an off ramp for the metering technology as well? I appreciate that you have some kind of an idea of how far you could do the broadband build out. And then as a stopgap, if signups are not working out, you can halt construction and continue with what you're doing, with what you've already done, and then see what develops after that. But we have the same kind of the same sort of processes in place for the metering technology, because to me that's an equally difficult problem with equal financial challenges. And then I have a follow-up after your answer for that.
So I don't see them as analogous, in part because people don't have an alternative in terms of getting electric power, and the meters, for reasons that have been gone over repeatedly, need to be replaced.
Yeah. No, there's no
So
question about that.
they're not analogous.
Hmm.
And you have another question or comment?
Yeah, and it's about the supply chain challenges that we've had. So in about the last 4 or 5 weeks or so, we've seen a downturn in the stock market, fairly severe. And given the increases in the interest rates that the Fed is charging, it looks like construction is slowing down significantly. I looked recently at the commodities market, lumber futures in particular, and they were crashing. They were down 60% where they were at their high point. So what I'm thinking about is the price increases that the PUD has mentioned in the newsletter most recently, the cost of transformers going up, the demand on transformers from across the nation being super high and then basically being unaffordable at any price. Are you anticipating the fact that maybe that scene will change a little bit and maybe the pricing could be readjusted downwards should that situation occur? Does prices ever decrease? I guess that's the question.
Well,
Or is that that might be a manager question, Ken? I don't know.
It remains to be seen, Seb, as to whether there'll be any decrease for the kinds of equipment that is most costly to the PUD. At this point, you still have a problem with supply, and for transformers, orders have to be put in literally years in advance.
Mhm.
And whether the downturn in construction is going to eventually have an impact on that, presumably at some point, but you're right. I think that's more of a Kevin question.
Mhm. All right, I'll ask him when I see him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tom,
Yes, Ken, I wonder if you can tell us what the current status is of the post-2028 contract with PPA.
I don't think that the status has changed any. We're not yet in negotiations with BPA on the post 2028 contract. So I don't have any information I can share with you because to the best of my knowledge, while there's a lot of discussion in the Public Power Council and there's another local group, the acronym is WAPEG. They meet in Tacoma. And of course, there's a great deal of planning going on and papers being written and pressure being applied to BPA. But as far as actual contracts being negotiated, it's not happening yet.
Thank you.
Seb, another comment or question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. So where do we stand with Landis and Gear on their contract? When does it expire and what are our options if we have any, if they close out that contract before we have our new system in place? We have a plan, a fallback position. a
So
plan?
we're still waiting to hear from Landis and Gear. It's more of a Kevin question, but
Oh, fair enough.
but
Okay.
I think Landis and Gear would be very foolish to simply stop providing the service, raising prices somewhat before we're done with our installation, or wanting to sit down and negotiate an extension to the contract that would involve somewhat increased costs. Would not at all be surprising, but the fact is that the utility industry is still a small community. People talk to each other, and I don't think Landis and Gear would want to take an enormous hit to its reputation.
That's a good point. Huh, interesting.
Dan?
Yeah, back to the separation of monies. Do you have an anticipated rate or an anticipated amount that will be coming from the electric utility to fund broadband?
So the answer to that is yes, but I can't tell you, and I've raised that question myself as to how much we'll be responsible for. I can tell you that in terms of the grant programs, probably the PUD will be responsible for about 5% of the costs, which is not nothing, but I think given the opportunity to build out to people who have poor service now, it would be tragic to turn down this opportunity. I mean, this is I think a once in a lifetime opportunity. The biggest cost is in construction, and that's what the grant money is going to be there for.
Well, the problem is if there were a real need, there would be a corporation there to fill it. And the PUD is diving in because it has the plausible advantage of increasing rates enough to fund its broadband. And I just see that handwriting on the wall and really am fearful that the rest of us are going to be footing the bill for broadband for for no good reason, and I'm not amenable to that. So I'm really going to be very insistent about keeping track of those numbers and seeing just how much of the utility rate, the electric rate, is going into the funding of broadband. And I'm going to be quite vocal about that.
So you raise an interesting question with the beginning of your statement. Having had many conversations with CenturyLink, because I live in an area that historically has had very much substandard service, to the extent that some of my neighbors couldn't even do email in the evening.
I
Because
currently
the
live in the same area.
So if there were a business case to be made for the corporations, they'd already be providing the service. But neither Wave nor CenturyLink has historically had any interest in serving really rural populations. It's analogous to why PUDs were formed to begin with, because the large electric companies, which were owned by banks back east, didn't see a profit to be made providing electricity to farming communities. So the choice is either you ignore the opportunity that exists now to take advantage of the grants and provide service to people who are underserved, or you're willing to have a little bit of skin in the game and be able to take, I think, a calculated risk. Nothing is without risk, but a calculated risk in order to provide the service to people. So
It's
Craig,
really two different schools of thought, I guess.
yes, well, it's a question of whether you consider broadband to be a utility or not.
I don't think that's the question.
No, I don't
The
think so either.
question
Go
he
ahead,
had,
Craig.
the questioning he had referred to a specific item that if we had a written business plan would be in it. And since we don't have a written business plan, you're unable to answer it. And I'd like to point out that while you talk about CenturyLink and Wave, I have T-Mobile at my business. It works extremely well. It streams 8 live cameras and it's $50 a month. And you're competing against more than what you think. Because it's 5G, once 5G is rolled out everywhere, everyone will have that. And you're not even, that's because you don't have a business plan. You haven't captured all your competition yet. So you're making a big mistake by not having a written business plan. You haven't answered the CAB's questions. And, you know, you're walking into something that you don't really fully understand, in my opinion.
I would like to wrap this part of the meeting up. I think we've pretty much covered about everything that we can with broadband, and move along to some more CAB business. Ken, did you have anything more for us?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that members of the CAB are telling me that the questions were not responded to. And I just want to state that because I thought that there was an attempt to respond to the questions. All right. I think I can do something about that. So this was fun, but that's all I had to discuss.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for fielding so
Thank
many
you.
questions.
Thanks, Ken.
Appreciated. Moving along to CAB business. One thing I wanted to discuss with you is at our last CAB meeting, Tom Engel made a motion and since nobody else seconded it and I thought it was worth voting on, I seconded it. And one of the CAB members made a point of order saying that since I was presiding over the meeting, that I couldn't second it. And I wasn't clear on that. I mean, there were two CAB members who actually pointed that out to me. And you guys have probably been involved in larger committees and larger boards than I have been. And I went back, and there are Robert's Rules of Orders, but there's also Robert's Rules of Orders for smaller committees and boards. And in Robert's Rules of Order for smaller committees and boards, the presiding officer can in fact second a motion, provided that it falls within the venue of being a board or committee that is constructed of 12 persons or less. So just for future reference, I just wanted to let you all know that. Craig, you have your hand up?
Yes, so the CAB was formed, and there should be bylaws that state which Robert's Rules of Order we function under. So does it actually state for small boards or
Yes, it does.
the regular one?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
I'm quite certain of that. So
That also is the policy followed by the Board of Commissioners.
So quite certain is not an answer to the question, though.
no, I can go back and, or I can go back, or you can go back and research the CAB guidelines.
Well, it makes a
But-
difference for the
but
future
my-
is going
My
ahead.
recollection is that in the CAB guidelines, and as I said, you can go ahead and take a look at them and should be able to find that there. So, moving along from that, subcommittee reports. We are back to resolution number 2018-015, which we seem to be in agreement on, except for this one paragraph that we've been writing and rewriting. Procedure section C, second paragraph, a subcommittee shall not constitute a quorum of the CAB. Based on a majority approval by subcommittee members, a subcommittee may invite non-voting members of the public to participate. To avoid having outside advisors becoming regular attendees of the subcommittee meetings, their attendance shall be limited to a specific invitation. Their participation shall be limited to providing testimony and/or expertise. Is there any discussion on this? Craig?
Yes, so basically, one of the things we're doing is going from a unanimous vote to a majority vote. Is that correct?
Yeah,
So I'm still considering that the subcommittees are usually only 3 people.
mhm.
I have a problem with doing that. I think that you should have buy-in from all 3 members. But one thing I would say at minimum is there should be all 3 or 4 members voting if it's going to be like what happened in the past, where you have an elected Board of Commissioner continually being on the subcommittee. I had a problem with that at the time, and I ended up pointing out that at the time it was a unanimous vote, which is why I think you want to try to change this now. And I don't think it's appropriate at all. The Board of Commissioners has their own venue, and coming into our subcommittee and trying to affect change at that level, I don't think is appropriate at all. In fact, I would like to see a complete ban on having elected Board of Commissioner at a subcommittee giving any kind of testimony.
Okay, that would be something for another day. I want to stay focused on this.
Well, I'm going to offer an amendment then to your, you want to change our bylaws, and I want to offer an amendment.
Before you, these aren't our bylaws. This is a resolution that the Board of Commissioners has made. They will be the ones who will decide this. These are just our recommendations. And before you make an amendment, we need to let anybody else who wants to speak also speak to this. So I'm going to let Tom speak, and I'll get back to you after everybody else has had an opportunity to speak. Okay, Greg?
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I would like to point out that requiring a unanimous decision gives one member far more power than two members. So it makes no sense to me at all to require that it be unanimous. There is no reason why one can't have dissension, but if two of the three people feel that it's appropriate, I think that's where we should go ahead. And really saying, well, this one person can block the action of the whole committee is for me very undemocratic.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to this? Any comments? Okay. I will just say that I do agree with Tom on that when you have a majority rule and you have three people, one person has more authority than the other two combined. And to me, that doesn't seem that has very good value for the whole committee. But I just want to check one more time. Dan, Seb, do you have any comments to make? Okay, Craig?
Actually, there are cases where you have to have unanimous jury trials for anything of consequence. You have to have unanimous jury.
Okay, we're not
Decision.
talking about jury trials here.
Well,
though.
nonetheless,
about
listen,
community.
nonetheless, there is a case to be made for buy-in with three members.
Okay, and it looks like Dan has his hand raised. You're muted. Dan, you're muted.
That'd be just like me. It seems like I thought we were talking about governance language that talked about how long a specific non-cab member could be at a subcommittee meeting. And somehow or another, I lost track of how we got to how that vote plays out.
Okay, well, what it is it's a full paragraph that starts saying a subcommittee shall not, it has read in the past, a subcommittee shall not constitute a quorum of the CAB based on a unanimous approval by the subcommittee members. And one of the revisions that we suggested for this was to change that unanimous approval by subcommittee members to a majority approval.
But only for invitation to someone else.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
So
correct.
if we're only talking about that one specific thing, then I have to agree with Craig that part should remain as unanimous. If we're talking about general subcommittee votes, then I believe that you and Tom are correct. But I do believe that without unanimous approval, then the subcommittee really doesn't need the information that person or persons may be able to provide. And so if we're talking about two different things, and it sounds to me like we are, then I think that language stands. And the rest of the language I am in agreement with. If we're talking about changing the entire vote structure, I am not amenable to that.
Okay, so I think what we're going to have to do with this now is, this is a paragraph that consists of 4 sentences. The first one being, a subcommittee shall not constitute a quorum of the CAB. There were no
Okay.
recommended revisions to that, And I think we're all in agree with that staying the way it is. The second one, as previously read, based on a unanimous approval by the subcommittee members, a subcommittee may invite non-voting members of the public to participate. And the revision was to change unanimous to majority. So I would entertain a motion on that specific sentence. And then we can, if we get a motion in a second, we can vote on that to decide one way or the other how we want it. So if someone wants to make a motion for or against, or if someone wants to make a motion to have it be unanimous, or someone wants to make a motion to have it be a majority, I would entertain that motion at this time.
I'd like to propose a motion that that sentence remains as it is right now. No changes.
So your motion is that it would remain as it is, and it would say based on a unanimous approval by subcommittee members, a subcommittee may invite non-voting members of the public to participate.
Correct.
Okay, so that's your motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so Craig makes the motion, Dan seconds the motion. There are 5 of us here, so I'm just going to make it easy and
No, wait,
is
wait
there
a
any
second.
discussion?
yes. So we are missing a number of our comrades here on this meeting. I'm not saying that would sway the decision either way, but I'm not sure that this isn't unfair to take a vote at a time when we're missing so many of us. Even though we have a quorum, we're still missing 4 members. That's my discussion.
Okay. Yeah, we've been trying to get this done for the last 3 meetings.
Yeah, I know. It's
And
difficult.
so I was hopeful to be getting something on it today, especially with the upcoming, well, just with the summer coming up and people being gone on vacation and so forth. Tom, you had,
Yes, I tend to agree with Seb. I think that it is in the interest of the CAB as a whole to table this until we have, say, something like at least 7 members present. I don't know what the procedure is. If there is a motion on the floor, I suppose if we want to argue that we should only do this if there are more members present, then we would have to vote down the present motion. And I don't know, would there be a separate motion that say we need at least 7 members present to discuss a topic of this importance?
Craig, you made the motion on this. How do you feel about this? And is this something that you would, do you want to take your motion back? Or I'm not exactly how that procedure works. But
And withdraw.
Well, so, yes, well, so you made the original motion. I'm amending that motion. Or actually you made the second change by sentence is what you wanted to do. And I'm saying that we should keep it as is. That doesn't mean that in the future we couldn't change it, but we have a quorum. And I think we should just vote on it. And then if you want to come back to it again in another meeting, when there's more people, then I think that would be a different case. But I think you have to follow through on a vote on the motion that I made. And then if you want to withdraw your motion, then the whole thing just goes to another meeting.
I actually haven't made a motion. But,
Well, yes, you did. The motion, the original motion is to change the whole paragraph.
No, I made that motion.
Well, motion has been made on that, and then you changed it, Jessica, to go sentence by sentence. And so now we're at that point. So I think we need to vote on that. And then if you want to withdraw the motion to look at this now and bring it up at another meeting, I think that would be the appropriate way to do it, because we have a quorum.
yes,
Right.
we do have a quorum. So,
Could I make a comment?
sure.
I would, I don't think this is a good idea to say, well, we'll take a vote now, and then next time when there's more people here, if they want to vote again, we'll vote again. What I would argue for is if you believe that we should only consider this with more people present, then vote down the motion at this point, and then it's essentially gone until it reappears at a later time.
Well, I have a motion on the
Well,
floor,
Yeah.
so I think we
Well,
should discuss
more-
the motion.
Is there more
discuss-
discussion? Excuse me. Is there more discussion about the motion? Seb?
Yeah, I wanted to point out a hypothetical situation. So let's say that I want to bring in a consultant in a particular issue. Two of my three committee members, well, one of them agrees with me about that, but the third person disagrees. We bring that consultant into the meeting, whoever it is, and their testimony or their evidence or their witness is so compelling that the third person actually agrees. So if that third person had the power to vote that person out as a consultant and not allow them to come give their testimony in our subcommittee, then we're missing out on the opportunity for somebody to change their mind, to gain new insight or information, or God forbid, wisdom on a particular situation. So I think by making it purely unanimous, then we may be missing out on some very good opportunities to learn from each other. So that's all my testimony is about that.
Okay,
If I may,
Point of order.
yeah, I'm
This is-
sorry, Ken. The motion's been made, it's been seconded, and so this is just for discussion only, so it has to be restricted to the CAB members.
Thank you.
So the motion's
Well,
been made and seconded.
I simply
Point of
wanted to
order.
say, I simply wanted to
Point of
say,
order.
this is a point of order also.
Point of
I think-
order. Point
I
of
think-
order has to
Craig,
be discussed.
Craig, you are not presiding
And-
over this meeting.
A point of
Please
order
not
must be
use
discussed.
valid
A point of
commissioner.
order must be discussed. You must discuss a point of order.
What is your point of order?
That Ken Collins is not on the cab and he has no right to speak at this point.
We're going to move on and vote on this. Ken, I will get back to you after this. Craig is correct.
I think that that's really a hostile action.
It's just
Uh,
parliamentary procedure. You
no,
do
it
the
is
same
not.
thing. Yes, you do. You shut down people if they're out of order in your meeting.
That
You're
is,
in our
that,
meeting.
that
You're in our
is,
meeting.
that is the prerogative of the chair.
You are not the chair of this meeting.
I'm
Neither are
not the
you.
chair, and you're not the chair either.
No, but I'm actually in the
think
cab and I made a point of order.
Excuse me,
All right,
please,
I
everybody.
think you've got two motions on the floor
We
is
ha-
the
we have-
problem.
Well, no, we didn't move to discuss this sentence by sentence. I suggested that we do that. I don't think that we had to have a motion to do so.
You opened it up.
We have a motion to leave the sentence, a subcommittee shall not constitute a quorum, to leave the sentence based on a unanimous approval by subcommittee members. A subcommittee may invite non-voting members of the public to participate. So I need to find out, I'm going to ask each one of you how you vote on that. Do you want this to stand as is where it says unanimous? Craig?
Are you asking for a vote now or discussion?
No, I'm asking for a vote.
I vote to keep the paragraph as it was.
The sentence?
The sentence remains the paragraph, whatever we had before. You can bring it up if you want to have more people to discuss this, bring it up.
We are
the next
voting on,
meeting.
we are voting on the sentence only.
Well, now you're getting confused because you said you weren't going to do it by sentence. You're going to do the whole paragraph. So which one is it?
No, you're.
Just
confused.
explain,
You're confused
explain,
on this.
explain it again.
Okay.
State it, please. What are we voting on?
what your motion was that we will keep the sentence based on a unanimous approval by subcommittee members. A subcommittee may invite non-voting members of the public to participate with no changes to that sentence. So it would read unanimous.
I vote aye.
Okay, Craig votes aye. Dan,
Aye.
Tom,
No,
Seb,
Nope.
and I vote no. So that does not pass. And since we've been having some discussion about that we do have a quorum, but we have actually the minimum here. If if someone wants to make a motion to table this until the next meeting, I would entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion because I think it's something that should be discussed with the remaining members that are now absent. They may have some other points and interests in following Craig's lead on this and Dan's that I have not seen or agree with yet. So I look forward to more discussion.
Okay,
I second that.
and Craig seconds it. So the motion has been made to table yet again, revisions to 2018-015 until we have a larger quorum of the cab. Seb, how
Yes.
do you vote on that? Yes, Craig?
Yeah, I'll vote in favor of myself.
Okay,
Aye.
all right. You know, and I am out of order. Was there any more discussion on this? I was kind of assuming that we had talked it out pretty
We're all
much.
discussed it enough.
I'm
Okay,
fine.
okay. So that's an aye from Craig, an aye from Seb, Tom,
aye.
Dan.
I'm voting in favor of Seb too.
Okay.
Thanks,
And
great
that's
to have your
unanimous.
approval. It's the first approval
And
I've
that
gotten
is
all day.
unanimous. So going forward, do we have any committee reports? Tom, have you got anything?
Yeah, I could do something briefly. So the subcommittee on climate change, in agreement with what we decided at a previous meeting, sent a brief email to Kevin asking if he would consider, how can I say this? If he would be receptive, if the management would be receptive to the committee crafting a proposal for a pilot network for a level 2 charging network to be owned and operated by the PUD. And so that was sent off in an email and we'll be awaiting a response to that. So this is in no way making a proposal on behalf of the CAB. What we're simply saying is the subcommittee would like to make a proposal, but they don't want to go through the trouble of making a full proposal, only to learn that the management is not interested. So that's just a brief report there. Also on electric vehicle charging, there's kind of two pieces of local news. It's always good to have something positive in a meeting. So let me just state that the individuals, including the city and the Climate Action Committee, put in a proposal with the Washington State Department of Transportation to get 480 volt DC fast chargers in Port Townsend, and we have been told that we ranked first among all the proposals, and if all goes according to procedure, 4 such chargers will be set up at the Visitors Information Center. And also in a separate proposal to another organization, I think this is a state organization, we were awarded the proposal was for a helping low-income people with electric vehicles. And we've been awarded 2 electric vehicles plus charging stations at the hospital and the Visitors Information Center. So a bit of good news for a change.
No.
Seb?
Yeah, I've had a charging station in my shop for 8 years now, and there's only 3 cars that have ever come in. I'm on ChargePoint and a couple of other spots. But that's good work, Tom. Thank you. Is this, Ken, do you see this as being a potential revenue stream for the PUD? Is that a place the PUD can actually pick up a couple of shekels here and there?
Probably.
I mean, it's.
I don't think it's looked at this point as a significant source of income, but depending on where the price of gasoline goes, that's going to likely motivate a lot more people in the direction of buying electric vehicles.
Mhm.
So, and we are a tourist community. That's what holds up our economy. So it could be, I wouldn't say lucrative, but it could be a positive income stream.
I think what's often not realized is that, say at $5 a gallon and a range of 25 miles per gallon, it'll cost you $5 to travel 25 miles. With an EV, the same trip would cost you 75 cents.
Mhm. I know I'm laughing when I get into my little electric teeny car. It's fine.
I think
happy.
that
Right.
in the end, it's probably going to be the market that's going to determine what happens here. And, you can try to force a lot of things, but we don't really know yet what direction this is going to go. And if you want, I can also give a report for the broadband subcommittee.
Sure. Tom, were you finished with your report?
I am.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Craig? Yeah, I'd like to hear your subcommittee report.
So, I want to make it clear that the broadband subcommittee isn't opposed to broadband. In fact, we support it. However, we did forward to the CAB, and from the CAB, it was voted unanimously to answer questions, and we have not seen the answers to those questions from either staff or the Board of Commissioners. So we're at a standstill at this point until we get answers to those.
Okay, thank you, Craig. I know that Rod's not here today, and I don't know if you attended that meeting, and I can't remember I think it was the 27th, where there was a Board of Commissioner meeting that was specific to broadband.
I've seen the information that was presented, and it's a nice glossy thing that you would have presented to people, but it's not a business plan. And nonetheless, it was a unanimous vote of the CAB to forward those questions. They have not been answered.
Okay, my understanding, as I said from the last meeting, was that there was going to be a meeting of the Board of Commissioners specific to the broadband. And I haven't talked to Rod. I thought he was planning on attending that. Viewing the materials and listening to the meeting, I have done that. I've scanned through some materials and then gone back and listened to a meeting. And there's a lot more that goes on in the meeting than you get just strictly from the materials. And one question, were none of your questions answered?
Not
No?
a one. And it
Not a
wasn't
one.
our questions. We forwarded it through the CAB, and the CAB voted unanimously. So the staff is ignored, and the Board of Commissioners have ignored the CAB on this, not the subcommittee, the entire CAB. And, I think it would be appropriate to just answer the questions.
Well, let me respond on one point. I had not seen until relatively recently the questions because they weren't sent out to all of the commissioners.
Well, that would be the
I was
Jessica's
not-
the one that's supposed to send that out. Did you
Well-
not send it out?
Excuse me?
Did you not send the questions out, Jessica? Because we voted to send the questions out.
The questions were sent to me from Rod, and I sent them out. And I would have to go back and look at my emails. But
Well, our subcommittee's at a standstill until those questions are answered.
So, as I said earlier, I will do what I can to see that you get a formal response to your questions. And I'm speaking about the broadband subcommittee as a whole. I think the questions are reasonable and absolutely deserve a response. And I want to make one more comment, going back to something that was said earlier. As a commissioner, I cannot vote, I cannot make a motion, I cannot second a motion. But in the discussion period, when there is a motion on the floor, not just because I'm a commissioner, but also as a member of the public, I absolutely have a right to comment.
I don't think so.
Excuse me.
Well,
I-
You can look up Robert's Rules of
Craig,
Order on that
Craig,
issue.
Craig,
I've been in a lot of these meetings
Craig.
and no, the public does not get. to
Craig.
do
Goodwin,
I'm going to ask them to mute you if you won't mute yourself. I'm trying to preside over this meeting. Commissioner Collins brings
If
up-
you want to censor me, that's one thing, but
Commissioner Collins brings up an excellent point, because when you go to a Board of Commissioners meeting, there will be a motion, there will be a second. The commissioners will discuss it among themselves. Then they will ask if there's any comment from the public.
we
And
didn't
that is
ask him to
allowed.
comment. We did not ask him to comment, and I don't think it's appropriate.
Well,
He
I
has his
think he
own
is,
forum.
and I should have allowed him to, and I apologize to
Well,
Commissioner Collins.
We got to follow proper decorum here, and that's why we have Robert's Rules of Order. Proper
If it were in the bylaws of the Citizen Advisory Board, that would be one thing, but you are, I don't want to prolong
Robert's
this
Rules
debate.
of Order
Fred,
is what
Fred,
we
You're
have to
wrong.
follow.
You are
for
flatly
all
I
your
think
wrong,
you're
period.
wrong. I think you're wrong.
For all
I
your
think
talk
you're
of
running
Robert's Rules
roughshod
of
over
Orders,
us.
you are not giving respect to the person presiding.
Well, he's
over
not
this
giving me
meeting. You are
respect
to
either.
Mute yourself. Mute yourself. The Low Income Subcommittee has not met. I have been busy trying to gather some data. I'm not clear on what the other members have been doing with respect to that. I hope to meet with them before the next meeting in August. And that's all I have to report on the Low Income Subcommittee. And I don't think there are any other reports to be had here.
could I ask
Because-
if the governance, we've never heard from the governance committee. Who is the chair
That's
of
what this
that?
whole 2018-015 is from the governance committee.
Okay,
We're waiting on this to go forward,
okay,
to look again at our operating guidelines.
thank you.
Thank you. With that, are there any announcements? Communications. Our next meeting will be the second. Oh, Dan Taylor.
Yeah, I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, there's been a lot of talk about grants and the PUD itself putting in place charging stations and lots of other things like that. I pay for the construction, operation, maintenance of my own vehicle. And I don't quite understand why I should be paying for the construction, operation, and maintenance of someone else's. Just because I worked hard enough to take care of my own interests, I don't understand why I should be taking care of someone else's. And I'm getting really stretched out over the amount of stuff that is given away in general, but is particularly being given away at the expense of the ratepayer at the PUD. And you can think it's all well and good and wonderful and helpful, but I'm not amenable to continuing to pay for things that are not being demanded. I don't see any great demand for broadband. I don't see any great demand for battery chargers. If there were a demand, there would be someone there to fill that void. And I just don't understand why the ratepayer is on the hook for all those things. I don't expect an answer to that. I just leave that by way of comment.
Thank you. Craig?
I'd like to second Dan's comments. I think they're spot on. Thank you.
Tom?
I don't have a comment.
Okay. All righty. With that, our next meeting is the second Monday in September at 2 o'clock. And thank you all for being here, and hopefully we will have a larger quorum with which to discuss 2018-015 and finally get through it and get it to the commissioners. Thank
Just
you,
wanna-
Commissioner Collins.
I'd like to clarify, so there's no August meeting is what you're saying?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. I skipped a month. No,
Okay.
our next meeting, thank you so much for that, Craig. Our next meeting is the second Monday in August.
Thank you.
I guess I was trying to go on vacation, so. All righty. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, Commissioner Collins. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks,
Jean,
Don. Thanks, Don.
Don, Jameson,